record. Here we go. All right, guys, next step. Let's see if we can keep this going. I want to get into how do I sit down with a buyer and do a presentation to them to where they're going to want to sign a buyer rep agreement with me, okay? I'm a firm believer, guys, that people need to be educated before they work with us, okay? I don't want to be that hard closer. I want to be that educator, consultant. You have a problem, you have a need, let me help you solve it, okay? So that's what we're looking at. So let me go ahead and let me share my PowerPoint with you guys. And we should be doing that right now. Awesome. Now let me move some of this stuff, see if I can move it. Nope. Okay, let's go. Here we go. Let's go slideshow from the beginning, and I'm going to want to duplicate. Hold on just a sec. And we either lost one or gained one. Okay, here we go. All right. Here we go, guys. And this is our generic buyer presentation, okay? Everybody, I believe I emailed these to everybody earlier this month or last month. I redid our buyer rep agreement and I redid our listing presentation. So this is the buyer rep agreement. And basically, guys, what we're looking at is, let me move this guy up here. There you go. Buyer presentation. And let me give you a thought. We as an industry, brokers, educators, we have not done a good job of teaching agents how to get buyer rep agreements signed. We are very, very good at going out and getting listing agreements signed because we can't put a sign out in front of the property unless what? We've got a signed listing. Now, my ultimate goal, if you guys knew my ultimate goal, here's what it would be. For my buyers to wear a sign around their neck anytime they went out looking at houses. Haven't been able to do that though, okay? I've not been successful in doing that because basically what is a buyer representation agreement? We're listing a buyer. That's basically the same thing. You know, when I've got a listing, I am the exclusive representative for that seller, okay? Now, how did I get that listing? Well, I had to come out, I did a market analysis, I showed them all my marketing, and they said, yep, you're the gal, you're the guy. They signed with me. Buyers, I don't think we've done a good enough job educating them as to what the buying process is, okay? And let me, another thought I've got that I want to share with you guys. If anyone ever calls me and says, Tony, you know what? Tal de fulano recommended you. Baba recommended you. Told me you're a good agent. I'm interested in buying. When can we go look at houses? I always say, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, before we go look at houses, I want to put you through my Real Estate 101 course. I want to make sure that you understand the process before we start the process. No obligation on your part. Would you let me invest 45 minutes educating you as to what the home buying process is all about? And so what are you doing tonight at 8 o'clock? Man, 8 o'clock, we can't look at houses then. I know. I don't want to look at houses tonight. I want to sit down and visit with you and show you the home buying process, okay? That was the whole mentality behind this presentation right here, okay? So let's get started. Basically, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, let's talk about buying your dream home. By the way, when you're talking to owners, it's the property and the house. When you're talking to a buyer, what do we talk about? Home. Words are powerful. I'm trying to create with a buyer what? An emotional attachment. What am I doing with the seller? Trying to detach, okay? Because I know you raised all your kids here. I know you got all the birthday party memories, but guess what? That home buyer coming in and that appraisal coming in, they don't care about that when it comes to value, okay? So again, a little bit different mindset, a little bit different mentality. Let's take a look. During our time together, what are we gonna do? Well, first thing, let's talk about the process. Let's talk about what we'll discuss. And we'll talk about loan pre-qualification. That's the very first step. Okay. We'll talk about home search and what would be involved there. I think that's the most fun part. Okay. That's probably what you imagine yourself doing. And then finally, the contract and the negotiations. That's where you're going to need some help, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer. That's where my expertise comes into play. Now, one thing I do want to point out, ultimately, we want to get to what? To number 4, the closing. Now, here's something that you need to understand, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer. I am going to put forth time, effort, money, and guess what? You're not going to pay my commission. The seller's going to pay my commission. I get paid for results. So when we're handing over the keys to you, to your new home, that's when I will be compensated. Okay? Does that sound like a fair way to do business, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer? Okay? So anyway, a little bit of a thought there, guys. My commitment, you know what? I'm your advocate. Expect more from me in representing you. And our company was built on the phrase, you know what? It's not just a real estate transaction. It's your real estate experience. Okay. My experience, guys, fill this out. This is where your bio comes into play. Okay. I read a good bio the other day. I think we were looking at it, Jessica.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And it was a really good bio. One of our guys wrote it from Dallas. I read another bio that went more like this. Expect me to call you back promptly. And then they put their commitment down on how quickly they call back. Expect me to respond promptly. Here's how quickly I'll respond back. Okay? So it doesn't just have to be about me. Look how many houses I sold last year. It's all about you, and how I'm going to take care of you. Okay? So anyway, we'll touch base more on bios, guys, but get that page filled out, talk a little bit about your experience and what you're doing. Now, first step in the home buying process, get pre-approved and pre-qualified. My job, Mr. and Mrs. Potential Home Buyer, is to make you a strong home buyer. That's my job. And the best way I know to make you a strong home buyer is to make sure that you know what's going on with your financing. Okay? If you and somebody else are competing for the same property and you've got a solid pre-qualification letter from a solid lender, guess what? You will probably win that bid versus someone that's with Joe Rocket at Internet Loans or something. Okay? So anyway, no pun intended on the rocket. Anyway, but anyway, you guys catch my drift. And what's the other benefit? Well, you know your price range. You know your payment. You know how much capital you're going to need, how much cash you're going to need for closing. You know what? I've got several trusted lenders that I can refer you to. Okay, folks that I've worked with over time. Now you're a strong buyer and you are taken seriously by the seller when you present your offer. Okay, or when I present your offer. Any questions on that, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer? Okay, so don't just present, guys. Make sure you're asking questions as well. Okay, so I might ask you this question. One of the toughest things in our industry is when someone thinks they can buy a home, they get on contract, and then they don't qualify. Do you want that to happen to you, Mr. Homebuyer? Absolutely not. Great. Well, that's a big part of the reason that I want to get you hooked up with one of my trusted lenders. Okay, but before we do any of that, let's keep going with the educational process. Okay, next slide. You know what? A lot of folks are familiar with FHA, VA, and conventional, but I've got some other tools we can use. USDA, maybe you go hard money if it's a temporary type loan. Maybe we find something seller financing. If you're interested in down payment assistance programs, I've got a couple of lenders that can help us with that. First-time home buyers courses, Homes for Heroes. Okay, if you're a firefighter, medical professional, there's different programs out there that we can get you hooked up with. Okay, and there are some credit unions that have what we call portfolio loans. They've got special loans that maybe don't fall under this other category here. But again, let's get you hooked up with a lender, and we'll look at some of the additional financing that's out there. Okay? Now, when you do go to the loan application, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, once you've done the application, the lender will provide you, by law, within 3 days of your loan application, they will provide you with the loan estimate. Here's what it's going to look like. Not real complicated. It's in English. It'll give you your estimated loan amount, your loan payment, your interest rate. Can that increase? Won't it increase? All of these types of things. But we'll get with the loan officer, and a big part of that will be explained to you. But you will receive a form explaining the loan to you. And again, within 3 days of you going to a loan application. A lender might ask you to pay $60, $70 at loan application. And the reason they do that is because they do have to pull all 3 credit reports, okay, to get a complete credit profile on you. Okay, does that make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer? Okay, so we go forward from there. Now, the home search. Gosh, you guys wish you had Matrix still. This is a Matrix screen. Okay, you know how to flex MLS. But these, I know, I just hit a sore spot. These are some of the fields that are in our multiple listing service. Okay, we're going to be looking for active properties, square footage, double car garage. Okay, and we'll talk. I've got another form that we're going to fill out, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, which basically is going to tell me what some of your needs and wants are on a home. Please be ready to compromise on some of those needs and wants. Okay, I've known people that have built their dream house, and after it was done, they still would have changed it. So just be aware. We'll try and get everything you need. You know, it's like I tell people, I need air, but I want a Porsche 911. Okay, so needs and wants. We'll look at some of the, you know, and maybe it's based on location. Maybe you need to be by family. Maybe you need to be, you know, by work, whatever it might be. But those are the kinds of things that I will help you with, and I'll be searching for. Okay, and let me ask you a question, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer. Would it be a benefit to you if I was out looking around for the type of home you're looking for while you're at work? Of course. But that's what we do as agents. We go out and we preview, and I may take you out Saturday. We may look at 4 houses, but I guarantee you I looked at 30 on the MLS before we picked those 4. Okay, so be aware. Even though you think we're just looking at 4, you probably looked at 30 because I picked the best ones, and for some reason we discarded some of the ones that we didn't look at. Okay, so anyway, that'll be a little bit about what will help you with the search. Now, when it comes time to write the offer, you're going to need to cut a check for earnest money. This is 1 to 2% of the sales price typically. Okay? Now, let me just share a thought with you guys. It drives me crazy to see us put houses off the market with $500 earnest money. But I know we do that all the time here. Okay? And you know what? If I'm working for a buyer, I want to keep it low. Right. Okay? In Dallas-Fort Worth, you're not going to win a bid doing a $500 earnest money. You get laughed out of town. Over there, we're seeing, especially in the under 250 price range, 2% earnest money, minimum, many times. Okay. So anyway, change this slide as you see fit, guys. Maybe it's only 1% in El Paso. Okay. Option fee, again, I've seen option fee in Fort Worth, $500. Okay. On a $300,000 property. Yeah, here, what do we usually put? 25, 50 bucks. Okay. Again, it's a different market. Yeah. Change these numbers to what you guys know works for you. Okay. If you need some help with that, Jessica, let me know. But we can adjust those. Earnest money in El Paso, I'd probably say 1%. Option fee, I'd probably say 50 to 100 maybe. Okay. And but I do see a lot of 25s as well. Right. So anyway, but this will be part of the contract. Now, let me walk you through getting on contract to getting you your keys and the closing date. Okay. This right here, guys, as an agent, I think we need to understand completely and thoroughly. Okay. I use this when I teach at the real estate school. Because when you guys are in school, man, they throw so many different things at you. You get so deep into the forest, you can't see the trees. So this is kind of jumping in the helicopter and looking at the overall picture in the real estate, okay? Contract to closing. And basically, what are we looking at? Well, we've got the executed date, we got on contract. Now, the next 30 days, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, we may not become best friends, but we are going to get really close because we're going to be talking quite a bit during the next 30 days, okay? And the first thing we're going to, and there's really 3 different things going on at the same time. We're going to look at the option period. We're going to look at what's going on with financing and your loan, and we're going to look at what's going on where? At the title company. You want to make sure that you get marketable title, don't you? Absolutely. So the title company is a big part of what's going on here. Financing is your qualification. There's 2 things that have to happen before we get a loan approved. You've got to qualify, income, credit, okay? We like to call it CIA, credit, income, and assets. That's what a buyer's got to do to get qualified, okay? The property's got to qualify. The value has to be there. The condition has to be there. That's why we get an appraisal done. And we've got to have what? Good title, marketable title. And that's what the title company is going to be working on, okay? So all of this is the process. Let's go through it just real quickly. Number 1, there will be an option fee that you pay. So you pay the $50, $100 to the owner. You have now paid, let's say, for 10 days, where you, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, can quit for any reason whatsoever. Okay? This is typically when you get your inspection done. This is when you make sure that you can get insurance. Okay? And because we want to make sure that you know what you're buying, what you're getting into as much as possible. Okay? And so you'll hire an inspector. That's probably going to run you $300 to $400. That may seem like a lot of money, but wouldn't you want someone to inspect $150,000 property, home, that you're going to be living in, paying for the next 15 to 30 years? So it's really quite inexpensive when you look at the big picture, okay? So you've got the inspection fee. We will order a clue report from an insurance agent, making sure there's no outstanding claims against the property and that you can get insurance on the property, okay? You get your insurance binder ordered up, and if there are any repairs that you're requesting, we will do an amendment to contract and ask for specific repairs. There is nothing that says an owner has to fix things that are wrong with the property. Now, if there are health and safety issues, to be able to get to closing, yeah, that probably have to be fixed. Like the AC needs to be working, okay? But there may be other things that are maybe more cosmetic, and maybe now that you're aware of them, you'll know to fix them later. But the owner doesn't have to fix everything. Here's where we'll negotiate again. I'll be helping you through that process, okay? Now, the next step, financing. Get you into loan app, make sure that you know the cost and everything before we even get into all this, but the loan app will have been done. Please, the biggest thing you can do to make everything go smoothly, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, turn in all your documents quickly to the lender. W-2s and tax returns and everything else, bank statements and updated pay stubs, okay? So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at there. We do have in the contract a time frame where you can get your earnest money back if you don't qualify for the loan. Typically, that's only about 10 to 14 days. That's why I want you to get pre-approved now before we get out there. So the only thing we're really waiting on is an appraisal and maybe updating some of your paperwork. Does that make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer? Okay. My job is to try to help you make sure you don't lose your earnest money if we have any heartache. But ultimately, our job is to get you to the closing table. Okay. So anyway, next step, once we're done with the option period, we get out of the financing contingency, you'll spend another $350 to $450 on an appraisal, okay? Since you're getting the loan, you're the one that pays for the appraisal, okay? They will verify condition. They will verify that value is there, okay? This is one of the reasons, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, the value issue, that I will run a market analysis for you on a property when we're getting ready to make an offer on that property. The owner got a market analysis done. I think you as a buyer's agent should also have a market analysis done. So you'll know what property sold for in the last 90 to 180 days here in the neighborhood. Okay, can you see how I'm trying to build that trust with that buyer? Plus, how many buyers do you think know half of the stuff we just covered, guys? We're not even, we still got a lot of stuff to go through, okay? The next part of it, you're in financing. Be aware, you'll need to update. Every pay stub you get, save it. They're going to ask for it. We'll scan it. We'll shoot it over to the lender. You'll be doing that, okay? Underwriting, that's a big fancy word. That's when they take all of the document, send it in to this really mean lady at the mortgage company, and they review it all. And finally, we get what's called your clear to close, okay? But it's a process. And then finally, remember we talked about that loan estimate? 3 days before closing, you're going to get something called a closing disclosure that's going to look a lot like that loan estimate. And it should be just about the same. There's a very small tolerance of changes. So the deal they told you is the deal you'll get, okay? And a lot of this happened after the mortgage reform to make sure that you as a buyer were protected, okay? And now, what's happening at the title company? We ask you for earnest money. What is earnest money? Good faith money. This is good faith money. This is you showing the seller that you're entering into this contract in good faith, but you don't give the money to the seller. It goes to a third party, the title company. This will be credited towards your down payment and closing costs at the closing table, okay? So that's your earnest money deposit, that 1% or so that we talked about. They're going to issue, the title company will, something called a title commitment, basically letting us know what liens are on the property, what's going on, and making sure that there's nothing bad going on that would stop you from purchasing, making sure that you've got good title, okay? The other thing that'll be required, a survey, making sure that the property is on the property lines and the fence lines and everything's in order, so there'll be a survey ordered. Want to make sure you get a home warranty. Highly recommend. They run about $500. The last thing you'd want is to move into your new home, and 2 months later, it's 105 degrees outside, and your AC goes out. Is that something you want to have happen, Mr. Homeowner? Oh, heck no. I said, okay, this is why we recommend home warranties. Depending on the property, depending on the negotiations, sometimes we can get a seller to pay for it. But if they won't do it, I highly recommend that you spend that money for that first year and get coverage, okay? The next step, finally, we get to closing. You're getting keys, you're getting your new place, that's when I get compensated, okay? Any questions, Mr. or Mrs. Homebuyer here, okay? Now, let me just stop here real quick. Let me get out of role play mode for a little bit. I've debated in my brain whether this is too much information for a buyer. Part of me, not a big part, 30% of me says this is too much information for a buyer. Might be a little bit overwhelming. But the other 70% of me says, you know what? We need to let people know the process. And my philosophy has always been, I can either spend time educating you up front, okay? Or this takes a lot more time. I can spend time educating you through the process. That's painful, okay? The other thing that happens is everything that's in bold, guys, on this screen is when a buyer's paying money, okay? And, okay, I got option fee, I got earnest money. Now I call them for the inspection. Oh, man, there goes another check. So next time I call them, the wife says, you know what, don't answer the phone. Every time Tony calls, we're writing a check for something. So you know what, I need to make sure they understand the process and going through it. So anyway, if you guys have feedback on that, I'd be glad to hear it at some point. But just something that I thought about. But so far, most of the agents, large majority of the agents that says, no, Tony, let them know what's going on. Okay, so anyway, and I really did try to simplify it as much as I possibly could. I played with 2 or 3 different formats. I had little boxes, and this one for me, in my grade anyway, makes sense. There's 3 paths going on at the same time, the 3 major paths, okay? So you got that covered there. Now, I do like to remind them what we just talked about. Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, be aware the TREC inspection form is a promulgated form by the Real Estate Commission. Inspectors do have licenses. They all fill out the same inspection form, okay? So you're covered there. Homeowners insurance, this is what a clue report looks like. What we don't want to get into is you not being able to get insurance on your property because the previous owner got money for the roof and never fixed it. And we've come across that a number of times in our marketplace. So to make sure we don't get into that issue 2 days before closing, let's get a hold of an insurance agent. I can do that for you. And let's get a clue report done as soon as you get on contract during that option period. Okay? Yes, sir.
Just a question now. Any insurance company can do it on that property?
Any insurance company.
It's
like the MLS, Arturo.
Okay.
You can call any agent and get info from the MLS.
Okay.
The clue report is like one of the databases or the MLS or the insurance business on claims. Okay, so that's good to go there. Good question, very good question. And the next thing I like to do, guys, I do like to let them know what the amendment looks like. Okay, number 2 is where we might ask for repairs. Okay, so anyway, these are some of the documents just to get you familiar with what's going on. Your appraisal, there is a standard form for appraisals as well. Okay, so you've got the appraisal, marketable title. You're going to get this thing called a title commitment. Okay, perfect. Pati's got one right there. Schedule C is the one you always want to read. Okay, because what's the C stand for? It's got to be cleared. Any judgments, liens, anything like that. And this is sometimes where our surprises come up. Okay, we had a listing just this week where the owner was not aware of some liens against him. Okay, and they were pretty high dollar liens. So guess what? He can't sell the home because he would be super negative. He'd have to bring several tens of thousands of dollars to the table to close. Okay, so anyway, that would be Schedule C. Here is what the survey looks like. What I'm trying to do right now, guys, is explain what I was talking about. Remember, never tell them what you can show them. That's one of the keys to sales. I can talk to you. I mean, I could have given you a lecture for 20 minutes on contract to closing, but it makes a lot more sense, and I think you remember it better when you have what? Auditory learning and visual learning going on at the same time. Okay, and that's what we're doing here. So I'm actually showing them a survey and what that looks like. Okay, the property lines, the way the property sits on there, and everything else. And doesn't this look a lot like our loan estimate? You'll get this 3 days before closing. Okay, just to make sure that everything matches up to the original loan that they quoted you at the lender. Okay. To get the process going, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, let me show you what a buyer representation agreement looks like. What do you think?
Excellent.
Good stuff. Good stuff. This is how you go list buyers. Okay, same thing that we've done for years, some of us with listing presentations. Now, I think we've got a good solid presentation for getting buyer rep agreement signed. Okay, all right. So that's the buyer rep, guys. Let me go ahead, or the presentation. Let me go ahead and quit recording that.